Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Kim Iversen Show. Happy New Year. It is our special New Year's Eve show that we're going to be doing for you tonight. We're going to be going back and looking at some of the biggest moments of 2024. Oh, I got to get my music going for you guys. Hold on a second. I got some party music, a little bit of jazz for tonight's 2024 look back. I've also got my champagne. Please join me with your champagne as well. Actually, technically, this is Prosecco. I am obsessed with Italy, so Prosecco it is for me tonight because this next year I am taking a vacation to Italy. So I'm sort of celebrating the beginning of 2025, a year when I get to return to one of my favorite countries in the world, which will be happening in the summer. I hope you guys have big plans for 2025. I'm hoping that this next year is going to be a really great year. We're going to look back at some of the political moments of 2024. It was obviously a huge, enormous political year. We're also going to be looking back at the Israel-Hamas war. Of course, that's going to be the onslaught on Palestinians. It's going to be a bit depressing, but then we'll move on. We will look back at Ukraine and Russia, some of the notable events that happened during this year in that war. And finally, we're going to finish up with some of the notable random events, and there were quite a few. You probably just won't even remember what happened in 2024. We're going to go through it, and you're going to be amazed at, man, there's just so much happened this year. So we're going to bring in Ben. Look at him. Happy New Year, Ben. You're looking fabulous.
Happy New Year, Kim.
You've got yourself, what are you drinking tonight?
I am drinking 12-year-old Flor de Caña, which is flour of sugar, national rum in Nicaragua.
Which is where you are. And hopefully this year, Nicaragua does not see a coup, and a U.S.-backed coup to stop the Chinese Nicaraguan canal. Let's hope that doesn't happen in 2025. But nonetheless, cheers, everybody. Happy New Year. Say goodbye to 2024. This is it. So let's go ahead and start off with some of the biggest political moments of 2024. Of course, we all know the election happened, but there was a lot that happened before the election. Let's go ahead and start off with, this was E. Jean Carroll versus Donald Trump. This happened in January, so almost 12 months ago. It was about 11 months ago. E. Jean Carroll versus Donald Trump. The jury actually awarded E. Jean Carroll $83.3 million after finding Trump guilty of defamation. This case recently went to an appellate court, but they actually, just like last week, and they upheld the ruling. So Trump apparently owes her $83.3 million. I don't know exactly how he's going to pay that, or if he's going to pay that, or what how they deal with that. Like, I'm sure it's going to be tied up in court forever and ever. What do you think?
I think that's a lot of shekels.
Okay. That is a lot of shekels. All right. February 8th. What happened this year? Joe Biden, good old Joe. There was the classified documents incident with Joe Biden. And if you remember, what did they say about him? They said that he was like this old, feeble man who couldn't remember anything. And so they didn't actually want to go forward with any of
still
it.
President.
Because, still president, but he couldn't actually, his memory's not quite there. And of course, what did everybody do? Everybody started talking about Joe Biden's memory and his mental decline. But what did Democrats do? They sat there and said, what are you talking about? He's as sharp as a tack. He's so great.
What mental decline? What are you talking about?
So that happened. Let's see what else happened in 2024. Donald Trump, he was found guilty. This was the big one, right? This happened in May. Trump was found guilty of 34 counts of falsifying business records in the New York hush money. This was the Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal, I think, were the two. This was the hush money trial, making him the first president to ever be convicted of a felony. We still don't really know exactly, this case was so strange. It was just like, what exactly did Trump do that was a crime in order for this to be a felony? Nobody could really ever describe that, but they were just really trying to stop him from becoming president.
Didn't Biden have classified documents in his Delaware garage, and they were just like, yeah, That's all right.
Yeah, right. But that's when they said, oh, but Joe Biden's too like feeble-minded to go forward with an investigation.
Right. Yeah, of course. Of course. Trump can't make that excuse, I guess.
No, but Joe Biden, oh, I don't really remember anything about those classified documents, but he had the codes. He still has the codes, guys, to the nukes. We still have
Uh-oh.
how many days until Trump takes office? So, keep holding your breath,
20?
guy, or don't hold your breath. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, right. 21 days. 21 days. Hunter Biden. Oh, gotta love this guy. He knows how to party. I wonder what he's doing tonight.
Yeah.
I bet he's having a good one. Although he says he's sober now. He used to live just down the street from me, like less than a mile away. Hunter, when he came
Wow.
and he lived
Did
in Venice.
you hear him like having like ragers and seeing girls running across the street naked or things like that?
No, I mean that would have been normal in Venice. So if I did see that, it wouldn't have dawned on me that that's Hunter. It's just that's typical. The thing about there was a lot of dark SUVs, and it was a bit challenging. It was a bit challenging with him being there just because of all of the Secret Service type stuff that he was entitled to. Yeah, or I don't even know if it was Secret Service. I'm not sure if he's entitled to that because I think it's only the underage children of the president. So I think once they're adults, they don't get it. But I think he's still got his own security. I'm sure that there was.
Yeah, he's just mobbed up. That's why he's got all those black SUVs.
Right.
He's mobbed up.
Exactly. So he was convicted of 3 felony counts of possession of a firearm while under the influence of narcotics. Like I said, knows how to party.
Prodigal son.
Okay, here's the presidential debate. I actually think we have this as a clip that we want to play for you, right? This is...
Yeah.
I really don't know what he's... And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of this. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look, and I'm going to continue to move into...
so sorry.
That's where it all came to an end.
Yeah. This is when it all came to an end. And now we know Joe Biden is no longer going to be president because of this debate. So, of course, June 27th was the first 2024 presidential debate between President Joe Biden and Donald Trump that was broadcast on CNN. I still think that they plotted and planned this. And they put it on CNN on purpose. They probably, they wanted the Democrats to see how far gone Joe was. And they really thought that replacing him, they could beat Donald Trump, which was just such a bad gamble. Maybe it would have worked out if they just wouldn't have replaced him with Kamala Harris. But Kamala Harris was the worst choice that they could have gone with.
Yeah, it was incredible to me that they stuck with her. I mean, obviously she's the natural choice because she's a VP, but she was never popular. She got like no delegates in the previous election.
Yeah, right. She never even made it to the primaries when she was running for president herself. She had just absolutely no popularity. So also on this same day, so this was obviously probably the biggest turning point. I would say the election, this 2024 election season had 2 real big moments. And I would say this debate was one of the biggest moments because it caused a sitting president to withdraw from the race and his vice president to end up being the nominee. So I think this was a huge moment in American politics. I think this one will go down in the history books for years to come. Students will read about this moment. And then the other one, of course, is the assassination attempt. I think that one was also a huge, huge defining moment in the 2024 election. But another defining moment somewhat was the Kennedy who decided to stop being a Democrat. Then he stopped being an independent. And he's still an independent technically, I think politically, but he joined Donald Trump in the election. And that is, or joined Donald Trump in championing him, campaigning for him, and now going to be in his administration. He held his own debate that day, if you remember, and it was so well produced. I was amazed at the quality of this debate that he put forward. I mean, this was a guy that was really serious about running for president, put forward all the effort that he could, really, truly was genuine about it. And, of course, I don't agree with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. when it comes to Israel. I don't agree with any of the politicians when it comes to Israel because they're all bought off and in line. But I love him on so many other points. And so I love that he has joined Trump and that he's going to be the, oh yeah, crack open some more, Ben. By all means, Happy New Year. Keep drinking. If you don't hear
Salute,
Ben
as they
talking
say
much
in
tonight,
Nicaragua.
now you know, because he's busy. I'm busy talking. But you talk now, so I can drink. You start
All
talking.
right,
Clearly,
I can do
I'm
that.
talking too much.
No, this was at Hillsdale, and I do have to say, as much as I agree with you about, I don't agree with what he's had to say about Israel at all. I liked what he was saying on other things, and I saw real effort in his campaign that I didn't see from even a lot of the primary people who were considered like the opposition to Trump or the opposition to Biden, the other Democrats and Republicans. I saw less effort from them, I feel, than I did from RFK establishing sort of a grassroots effort.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
made an impression.
Right. I mean, I like the guy a lot. I like him for the Health and Human Services role. I think he also would have been great as Director of National Intelligence, any of the intelligence sectors. I think he would have been fantastic there as well. But I'm
They would
happy
have
for him.
whacked him
I
if
like
they put him at the head of the CIA.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. No kidding. He's still at risk, I think, for the Department of Health and Human Services. I mean, the big pharma crowd is,
They've got serious. A few hitmen.
Yeah. Well, right now, I think they're running scared. I think they're afraid of hitmen coming after them at this point. So I think that's where they're at. So this was a big day, the debate. RFK Jr.'s debate, I think, and how well it was produced was overshadowed by the fact that Joe Biden was a complete bumbling idiot during his debate. And that just kind of reeled into the whole conversation of Joe Biden needs to go. And suddenly all of the Democrats that back in February, when the classified documents case came out saying the guy's too feeble-minded in order to pursue anything, suddenly all the Democrats that were defending him back then were suddenly all saying, oh, yes, it's time to step aside, Joe. You're just too feeble-minded. After all the Republicans were saying, see, we told you. And they're like, you're conspiracy theorists. There's nothing wrong with them. There's absolutely nothing wrong with them. All right, what is next here? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, there was about that, I think it was a week or two where I know you and I were wondering, and so were a lot of other people, is RFK going to get that Democratic nomination now that Biden's gone? And it didn't last very long.
No, because the very next day, Kamala Harris announced her candidacy. I mean, this wasn't right after this debate, but once Joe Biden finally decided to step down, which we'll get to, Kamala Harris the very next day was like, all right, I'm in. And Joe was like, yeah, it's her. I think he knew that she was just going to lose, that she was terrible. I just think he knew she was going to suck. And he was like, all right, well, you guys see how well you could do with her. You guys don't think you could do well with me. Yeah. And now Joe Biden, good for him. He actually gets to say, I never lost an election, right? I beat Donald Trump, didn't lose. And he gets to go to bed saying to himself, whether it's true or not, it's probably not true, but he gets to go to bed saying, I could have beat Donald Trump. Had they kept me in the race, I would have beat Donald Trump. And he gets to go to bed saying that. So, that's why he's got a little pep in his step these days. Okay, this next one was this was a Supreme Court decision that happened back in July. If you remember, this was also a game changer. This was Trump versus United States. It was the Supreme Court rules in a 6-3 decision that former presidents are entitled to absolute immunity from prosecution for official acts that rely on core constitutional powers taken while in office. So presumed immunity for other official acts and no immunity for unofficial acts. So they did give that ruling, and that was a big one for the Trump people and for America. And that sort
Does
of
that
interpretation
include official acts that are done under,
you could kill somebody,
clandestine, right? Yeah. Is this sending SEAL Team 6 after your political enemies or what? Because they're a national security threat.
I think if they could prove it's not an official act, that it wasn't an official act, and you operated outside of that, then I think no, there would be no immunity for that. But I think they're saying you get immunity if you do something as an official, in an official act. Like let's say you like a drone strike and it hits a family. This happens all the time. Then you would have immunity from prosecution for murder as long as it was under an official act. That's the way, I think that's the way it's I'm not 100% certain, guys. I don't know. And I've already had a glass of champagne, so I'm already, I can't think quite straight right now. This is supposed to be a party. so I'm not supposed to have to think straight. Don't ask me tough questions, Ben. Okay.
Okay.
The assassination attempt, huge moment in 2024. Probably the biggest moment, I would say, of the entire year. I'm going to say this is my number one biggest moment of 2024. I don't know if maybe you have a different one, Ben, but this is what I would say is
No,
the
this
biggest
is
moment of 2024.
this takes the cake. This takes the cake or the ear.
Or do you think Trump winning again is bigger than I don't know. I think the assassination attempt is still. I think this is the biggest.
Yeah,
the biggest
me too,
moment.
because I feel like he had a good chance at winning, but this assassination attempt, when he survived that and he got that iconic photo, like everyone was like, okay, he's won. That's when he won. That's when there was like, how are you going to compete with this?
Yeah. I mean, that was the
just
most
goes down in history. He's already won before, but this is like American history in the textbooks forever.
Right. Yeah. It was amazing, iconic, very American, really embodied the American spirit. Even people who hate Trump, I think, saw that and were like, and they were like, that there's an American for you. That's an American.
It humanized him.
Stands up and totally did. I think that was such an incredible moment. I happened to be speaking at that Trump MAGA event that day in Florida. I was in West Palm Beach, Florida, and I was speaking at a Trump event. And so it was just like the most bizarre, which I've never been to a Trump event. That was the only Trump event I've ever been to. And it just happened to be that day. I walk in the doors, and within 1 minute of us starting the event, Trump gets shot, and the whole room goes quiet. People started crying. I mean, it was just really. Wow. But then, of course, he was okay. So then the mood lightened, and everybody. But that was such a surreal day.
I remember texting you and like, are you watching the news right now? You're like, yeah, I'm at the event. And I'm like, oh.
Yeah, and they were giving us all this like Trump commemoration stuff. Like I got a Trump coin and Trump hats and Trump, all this Trump stuff. And I happened to be there on that very day. So that was something that was extremely surreal. Okay, so that was the biggest moment, I would say, of 2024. Shortly after that assassination attempt, July 13th, July 21st, President Biden announced he's toast. He's out, withdrawing from the 2024 presidential election. And of course, the very next day, Kamala Harris comes in as the presumed replacement. And then she, of course, eventually selects this clown, Tim Walz. I actually kind of like Tim Walz. Whether I like, just like, I don't have to, I'm not talking about his politics. I don't really know enough about his political positions to actually make a statement on whether or not I like him or don't like him. I'm sure there's plenty I don't like because he's like a standard true blue Democrat. But I think I like the guy as a person. He seems like a genuine person. And he seems like, yes, he exaggerated some things. Yes, he's the type of person that likes to tell a tall tale, a story. But he just seems like a normal dude, and I kind of like him. But
yeah, like
I didn't want him to be. Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like he just seems like, George Bush kind of had a similar sort of personality, where it's like George Bush seems like he could be a fun person to be a neighbor to and have barbecues, minus the fact that he's a total war criminal and massacred a lot of people. Yeah. I mean, if you forgot all of that, if you could just set that aside, Okay, what do we have now? Oh, yes, look at this great moment in American political history. A Kennedy endorses Donald Trump. He comes out to fireworks. I mean, look at this, the fireworks going.
The music
for the guy.
They're playing in this video.
The music.
Goes my hero.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like they really pumped him up. And I think he got his pick in the administration. I think he wanted to be the head of Health and Human Services. And I think Trump made the deal. Okay, you can have it. And good for him. It worked out so well for Kennedy. And this was, I'm going to just take credit for it. I'm going to take credit because
it's all you.
I mean, there is a possibility because, remember when I interviewed him and he was running as a Democrat, and I sat there and I said, why are you running as a Democrat? This is like the worst idea. They're not going to let you get anywhere. You're not going to have a debate. They're not going to give you a fair shake. He was like, Kim, what are you talking about? And I was like, I'm telling you right now, it's just not going to happen. So you should move on from Democrat. I even said to him, why don't you think about running as a Republican? And he was like, "Wah," couldn't believe what I was saying. I'd been in contact with this campaign. So his campaign, a lot of them had contacted me after that interview, and they're like, thank God somebody finally had the guts to tell him. Like, basically everybody around him was afraid to say anything, which to me, I'm like,
right, because he's a Kennedy,
jobs.
right? It's legacy Democrat,
Right, I guess. So none of them wanted to say anything to him, but I'm like, how could you guys not have said something to him? Why did you wait for me to say it? I mean, that's just kind of a little weird. I think if you're in a campaign, you would say to the guy, look strategically, right? I mean, that's your job, right? Exactly. So, well, they actually were trying to. They actually approached me about potentially being about somehow being in his campaign. But they said when they told him about it, he was like, you mean the woman that told me I shouldn't be a Democrat? He was like incensed. That woman that told me not to be a Democrat, that's who you're thinking. So, yeah, but then I would still talk to the campaign quite often, and I would tell them he's got to go independent. He finally did go independent. So I feel like, okay, I think he finally listened. Maybe I had something to do with that. I'm going to take full credit. I did have something to do with that.
You should.
And then,
I mean, you did it with Tulsi too. Look what happened.
Right. Yeah. And then the campaign was continuing to call me. And boy, this Prosecco is starting to hit. I didn't have enough to eat earlier today. But so this is going to get real fun, guys. New Year's Eve is going to get real fun here. So then I was in contact with the campaign some more, and I told them, I said, the best thing for Kennedy to do, I talked to one of the highest up in the campaign, somebody very close to him, had a long conversation with him. And I said, two different people. And I said, he's got to go and join Trump. The best thing for him to do is to take the VP role. If Trump wants him as VP, that's what he's got to do is go for it. That sets him up for a presidential run in 4 years. He still, I think, struggled with the whole thing. I mean, he's just a Kennedy, a heritage Democrat. I think he really, really struggled with the entire thing. Didn't want to give up being a Democrat. Really struggled with actually joining Trump. But he was a little too late, because Trump then eventually went with J.D. Vance. And because Kennedy, I believe he did extend it to Kennedy, but then that fell through. But then he finally wised up and joined Trump, as we see in this. But I think, look, I was telling his campaign for a long time, this is the plan. This is the path. If he wants, I mean, even after this, this guy is young, and he's not young by age. I think he's 70 years old, but he's young. He's fit. He's mentally jacked. Sharp. He's totally jacked. In 4 years, he absolutely could run for president on a Republican ticket and potentially win. And I think the Republicans would be overjoyed to have a Kennedy join the Republican side and actually be a Republican president.
Well, he's got to convince.
In 4 years, he's got a shot.
Yeah, I do too. I think that his hardest obstacle he'll have to overcome between now and then is convincing the American people that he's right about vaccines. And I do think he is right, but he has to convince everybody with data that he is. And I think he will.
I think he will in these 4 years. Yeah, I think so. I'm looking forward to that too. All right. We got Kamala Harris. Why are we talking about her again? Okay, so this was this the debate? This was the debate. Look at those. Look at those earrings. Yeah. So these are the supposed walkie-talkie earrings or whatever. They're like,
they're monitor
whispering in her ears. Yeah. That's what they were accusing her of, right? Giving her all of these talking points. So that Trump and Harris had their debate for the first time September 10th. This was hosted by ABC News, and Kamala wore these infamous pearl earrings. I think these are just Tiffany pearl earrings. I don't actually think that these have the answers piping into her ear. I could be wrong, of course. These guys are pretty
believable.
It is.
I mean,
you're right.
Yeah,
it's believable.
Right? I mean, she just calls the Clinton, plug and be like, "Hey guys."
Right.
Help on the DL, and they do it in the NFL, right?
Do they? I don't think those guys are wearing earrings.
No, but they have things outfitted in the helmet, and I don't know.
Oh, I wonder.
Controversy on that ages ago.
I thought the Patriots controversy was because of the deflate gate, the balls that they were deflating.
No, that was the other controversy.
Oh, geez, I got plenty.
They had a lot of controversies. Yeah, well, I'm from Massachusetts, so You know, I was a big Patriots guy for a while.
Oh, okay. This is the second assassination attempt of Donald Trump that happened September 15th. This was in Florida. They caught Ryan Ruth. Remember this guy was hiding in the bushes for a long time or something at the golf course. And so he was arrested. So there was that second attempted assassination attempt.
Like,
right.
Azov,
major.
like affiliate.
Major, right? Yes, Elon Musk, the political rise of Elon Musk. This was, I would say, the most unexpected, one of the most unexpected. I have to think about it. Maybe when we're done, I'll decide on what the most unexpected event of 2024 was, but this was certainly one of them. Elon getting up there, really championing Donald Trump, jumping around. He's wearing his black Make America Great Again hat. Has that one wild picture of Elon Musk jumping up and down for Donald Trump.
Like a little girl in a playground or something. Yeah.
Yeah. And now he's viewed as like the shadow president, the actual vice president, one of the most influential people in the Trump administration without being in the Trump administration. And now he's going to be ahead of DOGE, which is an unofficial government role. It's not even a real government role. It's an advisory role, which means he doesn't have to go through any sort of confirmation. He doesn't have to disclose any sort of conflict of interest. Yeah, none of that. So Elon Musk, the political rise of Elon Musk, I would say was maybe the most unexpected.
Right, but he's burning that capital that he gained, that, you know, because he gets a lot of credit for helping Trump, you know, at the end. But I mean, you were just talking about this yesterday with the H-1B visas. He's made a lot of enemies within MAGA, and even just today, they removed the verified badge and demonetized like half a dozen or more accounts over 500,000 followers, like big accounts.
For what?
It's unclear. We're talking about like Jake Shields, Sheikh Soliman, Dr. Lupus, like some of the most influential anti-Zionist
like the
accounts
pro-Israel, like the pro-Gaza, the pro-Palestine accounts.
Yeah.
And they were claiming that they were anti-Semitic.
Right, and he also axed a bunch of like Groyper, Nick Fuentes affiliate influencers too. So
wow, really?
In the past week. So this political rise that, you know, gained him so much social capital is being expended. So we'll see if he gains it back with Doge.
You know, it's those Israelis, they got a grip on our government. So, and they've got a grip on Trump and Elon Musk. Somehow they got them. Somehow they got Elon. I think when he went over to Israel, they were like, now let's take you into this secret room and let's open up this file we have. So we got this file, Elon. And this is everything that's in the file. Now we'll go ahead and start leaking this out to everybody. Or you could just be extremely pro-Israel from now on. Take your pick.
I think it's more straightforward than that. Like, he bought Twitter for $52 billion, and Twitter's success relies on advertising. I'm sorry, but like the ADL and other sort of NGOs and Zionist groups have a lot of influence over like the advertising cartel.
Oh, you're saying Jews run the world, Ben? Is that what you're saying?
I am. Yes. L'chaim. No.
Where's your power? When are you going to join that club? When do they let you in, Ben?
Still haven't gotten my invitation. I'm writing them every, few months. Like, hey guys, what's up? I'm here. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, right. You're like Benjamin Rubenstein. I don't know how much more. How Jewish can I get? I should be in this club. I've got to be able to.
Tribe.
You're like, I'm already controlling the Kim Iversen show, right? Is that what? That's probably the only thing keeping me safe right now, right? I'm not being demonetized yet. No checks are being taken away.
Yeah, you've got that cover, right? That Jewish cover.
Well, because you're in the cabal, so you're like saying, well, okay, let's continue. We'll just see if I can manipulate her a little bit more. Give me some time, guys. No, what was it that you were accused of recently? You had like a big Twitter feud with people, and they were accusing you of something. I thought it was.
I get some crazy stuff, Kim. One guy accused me of owning a Nicaraguan coffee plantation with slaves. That was a recent one. Yeah.
I could tell you wouldn't need this job if you were doing that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh boy, this was actually Trump winning. Let's actually play this. Let's play this, the meltdown. It's too soft, I think.
America is crying tonight. I'm not sure how much of America, but a very, very significant portion, and I mean literally crying.
Everybody is crying and so upset, and it is the end of their world.
Feels like the end of the world.
We were on Lifetime last night, and I was slowly getting drunk is what happened to me.
How do we explain how this is possible?
How did this happen? Experienced politician versus racist fake gynecologist.
Get your abortions now.
Oh, Lord.
We're going to be fucked, and we're going to have to live with it.
Wow.
You're awake, by the way. You're not having a terrible, terrible dream. Also, you're not dead and you haven't gone to hell. This is your life now. This is our election now. This is us. This is our country.
This is a different Earth today than it was 24 hours ago. It's a different place. Cause it just is different.
The woman who President Obama called the most qualified person ever to run for the White House couldn't break through. The question remains, who can?
Who can? Oh, no. Donald Trump. Donald Trump actually, he ended up winning the election, and they had an absolute meltdown. That was probably the best part about him winning. I think I was not shocked of him winning. The best part was this meltdown that everybody had afterwards. Like, oh no, this is the world we're living in. Go get your abortions now, which is terrible. Terrible thing to say.
You had all these Gen Z people like going super viral on TikTok. Do you remember that? There were some really good ones.
Yeah, absolutely having a total and complete meltdown. Last on our list of, this is the look back at the biggest moments of, the political biggest moments, election politics. We've got more moments that we're going to go over here, but the last one here is Hunter Biden being pardoned. That happened this month, December 1st. He issued a pardon for his son, Hunter Biden. And, that was after he claimed he wasn't going to be doing that, but he ended up doing that. So he ended up pardoning his son. Of course, in the election and political moments, we also had a lot of appointments that Trump is filling up, but that we really don't start seeing that until next year when their confirmations begin, and then we'll see how many people actually get through. So I wouldn't even, all of the announcements of all the various different appointments that happened over the last month, last 2 months, those are important, but they're not real until they're real in 2025.
Right.
That's what
it's
I would
not
say.
over till the fat lady sings.
Yeah, it's not over till the fat lady sings. Okay, where are we at on this list now? We are moving on, I think, to we're moving on to Israel, Gaza. So, that was the biggest I'm getting my lower thirds wrong here. Okay, so we're going to take a look back at the Israel-Gaza war of 2024. Some of the biggest moments. We're going to start with domestic. This is going to get a little depressing once we get further on into it, but then we're going to move on to things. We promise we won't leave you on a negative, depressed note, but we're going to start off with the domestic, what happened starting off in January. This hearing actually happened back in December, I believe, of 2023, but then shortly after this hearing, which was Elise Stefanik going around asking them, is calling for the genocide of Jews against your code of conduct? You mean you have to actually commit a genocide in order for it to be against your code of conduct? So Elise Stefanik was doing this whole berating all of these presidents,
outrage,
getting them to say something. Yes, totally. She ends up now she's being, she's been nominated for UN.
She paid her due. Yeah.
So she's going to be the one standing there at all of the UN meetings, holding her hand up when it's, is Israel not committing a genocide? And she'll be the only one. Yeah, they're not. We're opposing, or whatever it is that they do at those meetings. But this did cause, in early January of this year, 2024, the slew of resignations from the Ivy League presidents. And if you remember, Bill Ackman went around saying that this was against DEI. He was challenging DEI. But what we really know what Bill Ackman was doing is he was just protecting Israel. That was his whole entire agenda. He tried to frame it, because he thinks that Americans are stupid, into this is just really fighting DEI policies. But the reality of it is that all of these Palestine protesters, these pro-Palestine protesters, none of that has anything to do with DEI. That has to do with a genocide. Has nothing to do with DEI policies. But try to frame it that way, saying we're eradicating, we're cleaning up all of these Ivy League presidents, and we're getting a bunch of people in. And in fact, it was the opposite of DEI, because I think that all of these Ivy League presidents were they replaced with Jewish presidents? Was it like, so to me, that would almost be a DEI.
I think Harvard was. I could be mistaken. Don't quote me on it, but I think at least Harvard was.
I felt like all of them were actually, we'd have to fact check this. But I think most of them that resigned were replaced with a Jewish successor. And it's like, well, how's that not DEI? I mean, that would be the actual DEI thing, right? Is to say, we're getting rid of this person and we're going to only put in a Jew in order for like to, I know that it wasn't based because of DEI. I know it wasn't like a DEI motivation where it's like, well, we just need more people of color, or we need more women, or we need more this in these roles. And so that's why, but it was done similarly, I think, as, oh, we need more Jews in these positions of power in order to protect Israel. It's a similar, right? Similar thinking.
It's like the same thing. It's like it's like the reverse racism thing. They confuse people into basically just doing the same exact thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Can we just hear her?
Alan Gerber is the president.
The answer is yes, and this is why you should resign. These are unacceptable answers across the board. Dr. Kornbluth, at MIT, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate MIT's code of conduct or rules regarding bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
If targeted at individuals, not making public statements.
Yes or no? Calling for the genocide of Jews does not constitute bullying and harassment?
I have not heard calling for the genocide for Jews on our campus.
But you've heard chants for intifada.
I've heard chants, which can be anti-Semitic depending on the context, when calling for the elimination of the Jewish people.
So those would not be according to the MIT's code of conduct or rules?
That would be investigated as harassment if pervasive and severe.
Ms. McGill, at Penn, does calling for the genocide of Jews...
She couldn't believe it. She just couldn't believe it.
No, I mean, this is the problem, though. Look, it's what I brought this up before with you, Kim. It's what they did to Bernie Sanders. You give them an inch and they take a mile. You have to stand your ground and say there's no anti-Semitism. There's no one calling for the genocide of Jews. Intifada is not a call for the genocide of Jews. You have to you give them an inch, they take a mile. I mean,
well, I do think there is
right. Alan Gerber is now the president of Harvard. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Like what?
Yeah. I think there is anti-Semitism, but I think it's individual. I mean, I see anti-Semitism online all the time, but I see racism and bigotry coming from random people about anything and everything, and directed towards anybody and everybody, and that including white people. I see a lot of bigotry and racism against white men. I see a lot of bigotry and racism against women. Misogyny against women. I mean, I see everything online, but it's never like the group is to say all these protesters are anti-Semitic is where it gets crazy, right? It's like, yeah, you might find one example or two, but actually a lot of the examples that they found online, they ended up, what was that woman that gave the Nazi salute, and she was wrapped in a keffiyeh and she gave the Nazi salute, and they were like, oh, look at this horrible, and then it ended up being a Jewish woman who was like masquerading. Right, she was like masquerading as a pro-Palestine protester and doing that shit.
Oh, there was also this somebody tried to burn down a store, and it turned out it was the Jewish owner of the store, who filed, false insurance claim.
I mean, it's crazy. It's totally crazy. All right, next, what happened domestically when it comes to the Israel-Hamas war, there was a lot of protesting. So we saw tons and tons of protests across the country, protests that they're trying to now curb. The new Trump administration is saying that they're going to be cracking down on this free speech. They're going to be calling this, they're going to be trying to somehow make this illegal and criminal in some way, or they're going to be defunding schools. They're going to be doing something in order to hinder this free speech. So I'm not, I know that the Trump administration, there's going to be a lot of pro-free speech on certain things. They're going to be very anti-free speech on other things, in particular when it comes to Israel. It's not going to be the only thing, though. I think we're going to see a lot more. I think with the H-1B visa issue, I think we're going to see a lot of cracking down on oh, you can't say anything negative about Indian. This is anti-Indian rhetoric is what they're going to kind of try to claim. Right, they're going to somehow, because it benefits the CEO class.
I mean, there is
keep those
a
H-1B
bit of
visas.
That, though. There's some real anti-Indian. Yeah.
Right. But there's also just people not wanting to lose their jobs to workers that are coming in on the
Totally.
H-1B. So we saw a lot of protests
Yeah, you
happening
better not
all
hire
across
any
America.
Indians, Kim.
Well, you know, got to replace you somehow, Ben. I'm going to make you train him too. That's
You're gonna get
they're going to be
swap
cheaper.
out the Zionist infiltration for Hindutuva infiltration.
Yeah, why not? You know, mix it up a bit. I'm an equal opportunity. What would that be? It's like not an equal. It's a, or just like, yeah, whatever. Anyway, we also saw a lot of the protesters protest into even their graduation ceremonies. They walked out of the graduation ceremonies. We saw a lot of that this year. This one was terrible. This was Aaron Bushnell. He ended up self-immolating in front of the Embassy of Israel in DC as a protest against America's support for Israel's war. So that was one of the most notable moments that happened. That happened back in February. There have been a couple of other people who've also self-immolated since him, but he was definitely the most notorious one to do it.
Wasn't there like a
party.
CNN guy who tried to do it and got it was put out at a protest
I don't know.
or something?
I don't know.
The ex-CNN guy who's like, I've produced segments for so-and-so and I can't take it anymore. I don't know. And then there's like a video of it and the cops put the fire out as it's getting started. It was at a protest.
I just think this is like the most extreme thing to do to yourself. But he did that. It was an extreme form of protest. And we'll spare you the rest of that because it's a party. So let's move on to this party, Netanyahu. This was certainly a party in Washington, D.C. When Netanyahu
the shekels
came
are
to speak.
flowing.
Yes, this was in July of 2024, July 25th. Netanyahu came to Congress and look at how many standing ovations he got. We sped this up. This is every standing ovation.
It's like 49.
That he ended up getting. Right. I thought it was more than that. I think it was a record number, though. They say, and he was like, look, I got a record number of standing ovations and applause. And I mean, this is a guy that's committing genocide, and our government officials stood up and cheered him on over and over and over again.
Oh, they are his
all right.
employees.
Yes, they are. You're right. So they must. Well, then, Ben, give me a standing ovation. What's going on here? Why am I not getting some cheers and standing ovations? I should be getting like 100 a day. I don't pay you enough. He pays them a lot more, right? He pays them a lot of money, millions of dollars. All right, what are we looking at here? What is this?
This is the rescue team going to search for Ibrahim Raisi, the former president of Iran, who was killed in a very suspicious helicopter crash.
Right. So this made the list. Now we're going to move on to some of the most notable deaths with the Israel-Hamas war of the leadership. This one was technically, they claimed it was just like a malfunctioning or something happened with the helicopter.
The weather.
Yeah,
was
weather.
bad,
Right. Weather
said.
inclement. Yeah. But it's very suspicious. However, the suspicions around this death, there's a lot of people who think it was internal, that it was that it was an Iranian kind of like coup, basically, against Ibrahim Raisi.
Yeah, I agree.
A more pro-Western, let's move on and take a different path group. The current group that's in power.
Maybe like half reformist, oligarch class Iranians, with Mossad connections in technology. Who knows?
Yeah, right. All right, another notable death that happened during the Israel-Hamas war was the death of Hassan Nasrallah. Is that what this one was? They claimed that they got him in an airstrike, right? This was an airstrike. It
was like
in
16
Lebanon.
bunker buster bombs and the hole in the.
Well, Ben froze. Ben's frozen. What happened to Ben? We don't know, but there he is. He's frozen. Anyway, the show must go on. So we've got Hassan Nasrallah there. That was his death. What do we have next? We do have, this is the assassination of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh. So this happened in Iran, and that was the building that he was in, and he ended up getting, there was a secret bomb that was planted, and he ended up being killed. Also, another one that was killed this year, I think the most notorious one would be this one. This is Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. He was killed after over a year on the run. And this was one of the most epic videos to see. He's been chased after. The drone was going after him. He throws a stick at the drone. And that was, I think, the most notorious death of the Israel-Hamas war. But Israel has successfully wiped out quite a few leaders this year, including, now this one wasn't a death, but it was the fall of Syria and the ousting of Bashar al-Assad, which happened December 8th. So just earlier in the month, Bashar al-Assad was ousted from Syria, and that was also a major win for Israel. So they've been successful this year, I think, in eliminating quite a few of these leaders. Trying to figure out where Ben is. Let me see how he's doing. You still there? I'm chatting him, see if I can get him back in here. Anyway, now let's move on to, this is where it's going to get a little depressing, but this is the most depressing part of the show, and then we'll move on to things that are less depressing. But let's talk about some of the war crimes that Israel committed this year. We're just going to do some of the most notorious ones that happened over the year. This one was Hind Rajab. This was the little girl that was trapped. 6 of her family members were killed. She was on the phone saying, help me out. And she ended up, when paramedics came to rescue her, the paramedics were killed, and she was killed as well by Israeli forces. So this was one of the most notorious killings that happened. This happened January 29th. And this was one of the most tragic, terrible displays of really the IDF and how terrible they have been this entire year. The Rafah massacre also happened. This one was on February 12th. This is when the IDF launched an assault on Rafah, killing over 83 people. The airstrikes destroyed at least 1 mosque, multiple inhabited homes, killing most or all of the occupants. We're going to move quickly through this part of the show because I know this is kind of depressing, but it's important to look back at the year and all of the crimes that Israel committed this year. The Flower massacre. This happened February 29th when at least 118 Palestinians were killed. 760 were injured. Israeli forces opened fire while Palestinians were seeking food from aid trucks in the coastal Al-Rashid Street in Gaza. The incident was the deadliest mass casualty event to have taken place in the Gaza Strip since the start of Israel's operation. So more than 100 people were killed trying to get food. On April 1st, the World Central Kitchen experienced drone strikes by the IDF. A 3-car convoy was targeted belonging to the World Central Kitchen, killing 7 aid workers. The workers had been overseeing the transfer of a shipment of food from a makeshift pier to a warehouse in Gaza. So that was April 1st, extremely, another showcasing. Looks like Ben's internet went out. This is one of the problems of him living in Nicaragua. It's not exactly the most reliable place to be. Okay, next, let's go on to this one. What is this one? This looks like the pier. This isn't the pier, the floating pier. There was a refugee camp that, let me see where we're at on this list. One second, guys. Bear with me. No, this is the pier collapsing. That's what I thought. Okay. So the pier didn't last long. Remember when the United States said, okay, we're going to build a pier and we're going to get aid over into Gaza, which was the most ridiculous thing in the world because it was like, look, you're supposedly the ally to the IDF. You're helping the IDF. You're giving them all this money. So why wouldn't you just tell the IDF you're going to need to bring in aid through trucks, through the borders? The IDF wasn't allowing it. So the United States was like, okay, then we'll build this floating pier. And this is when the pier ultimately collapsed, which was totally and completely ridiculous. This is, if you remember, in August, there was the Bet Salm release of Welcome to Hell report exposing the Israeli torture prison system and all of the systemic torture that the Palestinian prisoners were dealing with. That came out in August. In October, this was a terrible image of a man. This was a patient in a hospital who was burning to death. This was also a notorious event that happened over the year. This was in October. The IDF struck tents near a hospital, killing 5, injuring 70, and one of the patients burned to death, which was terrible. And lastly, one of the craziest things that happened during this war is all of the journalists that have been killed. They've killed so many people. They've killed more journalists than any other place on earth has collectively killed journalists. And this is the map. You can see 217 journalists have been killed since the start of the Gaza onslaught. And because of all of that, if you remember at the very beginning of the year, the ICJ issued a preliminary ruling finding that the rights asserted in South Africa's filing were plausible, that they were committing a genocide. That was very early on, back in January. That was before all of the events I just laid out for you now, which even support further that there is a genocide going on in Gaza. January, the ICJ ruled it is plausible. And of course, in November, the ICC issued arrest warrants for all of these men that you see here in this photograph. Many of them, well, 3 of them are dead, and 2 of them, Netanyahu and Gallant, are from Israel, and they're still around. I think Mohammed Deif I think he was killed during the war. So I do think all of them are killed. I know, of course, Sinwar and Ismail Hania were killed. I'm pretty sure Deif was as well. I'd have to double check that one. But this was the arrest warrants that they issued from the ICC. All right, we're going to move on now. We're going to go to the big things that happened in the Russia-Ukraine war for 2024. Tucker Carlson starts off the year back in February interviewing Vladimir Putin. The interview was accused of promoting Russian disinformation. Tucker was accused of being a Russian informant or Russian spreader of disinformation for sitting down with Vladimir Putin and actually having a conversation with him. Cheers to Tucker for doing it. It's great. Okay. We need to move on now. This is Alex Navalny. He died this year, February 16th. You remember he died. He was announced. This was what the the West called the biggest opposition to Putin. There was no real true opposition, but they were trying to build this guy up in order to effect some sort of regime change. He ended up dead this year. Sweden joined NATO. This was back in March. Another one, NATO was not supposed to expand, but Sweden has expanded into NATO. June 1st, we saw a large-scale drone attack hitting Moscow. I guess this is the Moscow drone attack. So this was something that the Ukrainians were able to do. I would say in 2024, the Ukrainians actually had more, they did more towards Russia. I mean, Russia was kind of more of the same against Ukraine, but Ukraine kind of pushed the boundaries more, pushed into Russia more. We saw a lot more of that. It isn't going to change anything. It's only making things worse. Really, they should come to an agreement. Hopefully it will, and this war will end in 2025. But one of the things that they did was they got drone attacks into Moscow. Also, Ukraine launched a surprise offensive into the Kursk region of Russia, where they took some land in Russia. This made no real strategic sense. It was just something to do to try to antagonize the Russians, but they were able to do that. Also in November, that was back in August, November of this year, Joe Biden gave Ukraine authorization to use long-range missiles after Ukraine launched ATACMS missiles and struck inside of Russian territory shortly after that. So we thought Joe Biden giving them authorization to use those ATACMS would take a bit longer, but then it was pretty much right away, which just goes to show that they had set this up in advance. They weren't just giving the authorization and then, okay, yeah, we'll ship them to you. We'll get everything set up. They'd already set it up before Joe Biden gave them the green light to actually use it. And also Russia used is this the right image for that? Hold on one second. Let me go back to this one. This is, so the Kursk invasion, right? Then Russia, sorry, the Prosecco is getting to my brain right now. The Joe Biden gave Ukraine the authorization to use ATACMS, and as a response, this video I think here is actually Russia using their Oreshnik missiles that they ended up using as a response. And lastly, amazingly, here's Zelensky. The biggest thing is that happened in 2024 with the Russia-Ukraine war is Zelensky never changed his outfit. He wore the same clothes throughout 2024 that he was wearing in 2023. The man has a uniform. and he's wearing it. He's completely, totally wearing it. Okay, let's move on to some of the biggest notable events that happened in 2024. This is how we're going to wrap up the night a little bit lighter, some of these things. One of the big things that happened in 2024, I think the biggest loser of 2024 besides Kamala Harris and Joe Biden would be Boeing. Boeing was a giant loser in 2024. This was the Alaska Airlines flight that suffered an uncontrolled decompression after one of the emergency exit doors blew out. Could you imagine being one of the people sitting there and suddenly the door is gone? We also saw the dead whistleblowers for Boeing. This is John Barnett and Dean. What was Dean's last name? I'm sorry, I don't remember. But these two gentlemen were the whistleblowers against Boeing. They ended up dead. There was a third whistleblower who's not dead, but who reported being afraid of being killed. So these guys were killed. Well, they say they committed suicide. You know, they came up with all these excuses. Also with Boeing is they trapped some astronauts into space. They had a Starliner capsule that launched a flight crew into space, and they were supposed to be there for 8 days. They're still there. They don't know when they're coming home. They were supposed to come home maybe February. That's been pushed back again. So these guys are going to be stuck in space for probably a year or longer. Who knows when they're getting these astronauts home, which should have been an 8-day venture. And of course, just recently, I mean, we don't know if this was a Boeing disaster or not. It looks like the landing gear didn't come down. This was a Boeing plane again, and that South Korea plane ended up just the other day. A bunch of people were killed in that airplane crash, that really tragic incident that happened. Also, what happened in 2024, if you remember, this one was one of the most funniest events of 2024. These were the tunnels that were discovered under the world headquarters of the Chabad Lubavitch movement in Brooklyn, New York. If you remember this, the tunnel Jews back in January, one of the funniest moments. Also, Balloon Gate. This was from January 28th to February 4th. These high altitude balloons apparently originating from China that were flying all over the United States and supposedly spying on us, although they shot it down and they didn't find any sort of evidence that these were sending any sort of information back to China. But that did happen late January, February of this year. Mitch McConnell. This is, I think, another showcasing of elder abuse. Right, this is Mitch McConnell freezing on camera, clearly maybe having a stroke, having some sort of mental something. But he did announce in February that he would be stepping down as Senate Republican leader and that he would not be, and he's not, he isn't now. So he shouldn't even be in the Senate at all, like many of them. Back in March, what did we see? Haiti had a complete collapse. Their Prime Minister, Henri, was prevented from returning back. The country reeled into absolute chaos, and that happened back in March. Also back in March, the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge, absolutely incredible, partially collapsed after a large Singaporean ship collided with it. 6 people were reported missing and presumed dead. Also in March, on my birthday, that was the big event that happened in March 28th, my birthday. No, actually, also on March 28th was Sam Bankman-Fried was sentenced to 25 years in prison after being convicted of several counts of wire fraud and money laundering after he scammed $8 billion from investors via his company, FTX. April this year, we saw the bird flu scare. If you remember, they tried to push this one on us, try to get us to be afraid. Bird flu was coming. We're going to have another pandemic. Another person was infected back in April. They tried to, there was a lot of chatter about this, like it was going to become the next big pandemic. Also, Biden here, he signed this is the TikTok ban. What we're watching here is the TikTok ban. And this is when Mr. Chu kept asserting to what's his name, Tom Cotton, that I'm not Chinese. I'm from Singapore. I kept saying, I'm Singaporean.
Your wife is an American citizen. Your children are American citizens.
That's correct.
Have you ever applied for American citizenship?
No, not yet.
Okay. Have you ever been a member of the Chinese Communist Party?
Senator, I'm Singaporean. No.
Have you ever been associated or affiliated with the Chinese Communist Party?
No, Senator. Again, I'm Singaporean.
Let me ask you some hopefully simple questions.
I mean, what a total idiot. Tom Cotton. What a total idiot. Okay. The biggest event, one of the biggest events of 2024, June 24th, WikiLeaks, Julian Assange released finally after many years in custody. This was a huge moment, I think, for free speech, for journalism, and obviously a huge moment for Julian Assange. June 24th of this year, he was released. That's a big one. All right, Ben he says his internet is completely out, guys. So
the
we're
rapper and music executive, perhaps being linked to a sex
Diddy.
trafficking investigation.
He got some shots of a few people coming out of the home. Those people have been detained. Now we're trying to still connect the dots. We do have some sources on scene here.
This was September 16th. Sean P. Diddy Combs was arrested in Manhattan, charged with racketeering, sex trafficking, transportation to engage in prostitution. He is still sitting in jail, but that was the arrest of Diddy. October 13th, SpaceX achieved the first successful return and capture of Super Heavy booster from Starship, the biggest and most powerful rocket ever to fly. This was a pretty big accomplishment, I think, in space exploration, science, engineering, a major, major, major accomplishment. And it was American, which is great. Well, I mean, led by a South African, but, you know, an American South African. November of this year, what did we see? The UFO hearings. This was, you know, these people had been demonized. People had been demonized for many decades of being conspiracy theorists, for believing in UFOs. And now here we are in 2024, November 13th, this hearing where they pretty much said, yeah, there are UFOs and it's all being covered up. And we've known about them for a really long time. So this was a bombshell moment, another conspiracy theory come true. November of this year, we saw Alex Jones, InfoWars, go into a bankruptcy auction where supposedly The Onion purchased it. I believe that is being contested in court at the moment, but that was also a big moment against free speech. Alex Jones has been battling a free speech issue. I've been very much against what has happened to him. I think you can say I think you can say what you want to say. I understand that there was some repercussions that happened, but that's free speech is free speech, and Alex Jones is allowed, in my opinion, to share whatever theories he thinks, including theories that many people find outrageous. And I think this was a really negative thing for free speech, to say that if you say something, if you have a theory and it ends up being that it causes harm to certain people, you could be held liable. I think that's a really bad precedent that has been set. Also, one of the biggest events in 2024 that's happened recently was the assassination of CEO Brian Thompson in New York City. And of course, the arrest then, the subsequent arrest, and the lionizing of Luigi Mangione. That was one of the bigger events that happened this year. I think it's a big event because it's just fresh. We've had many events, big events that happened this year, I would say. And last but not least on the list, we're going to say, wrapping up the year of 2024, President Jimmy Carter dying at the age of 100 in his hometown of Plains, Georgia, 100 years old, lots of good innings. Look, I would say, whether you agree with his politics or not, Jimmy Carter was a good person. He might have been a terrible president, depending on who you are. You might think he was a great president. You might think he was a terrible president. I'm not here to assess his presidency at the moment. But I will say that this is the last president who didn't make a fortune being president, the last one who actually kept his honor and dignity and didn't sell his soul. So I would say that Jimmy Carter, for that, should be revered as a national hero for being the last of the U.S. sitting presidents who didn't go off and basically milk everything they possibly could off of their position as president of the United States. So that wraps up the year. That wraps up 2024, guys. Thank you so much for being here tonight. We're going to wrap it up. I think I've had enough. I think you've had enough. I hope you have a wonderful evening tonight. I hope that you stay up, ring in the new year. And I appreciate you guys. We will be back next year. We'll be back next year. We're taking tomorrow off, New Year's Day. We're not here, but we will be here the day after, on the 2nd and on the 3rd as well. So we will see you guys next year. Thank you so much for watching. Happy New Year, everybody. Bye-bye.
Mấy cái nắp nó rồi công tắc nó hoạt động như nào ta? Mình hơi bất ngờ về chiếc công tắc này anh em ơi. Khá là hay anh em ạ. Thì bây giờ mình sẽ phải lắp lại. Bây giờ mình chưa hiểu nguyên lý hoạt động của nó, bây giờ mình hiểu rồi mình sẽ lắp lại anh em nhé. Đây. Khá là thông minh, mình khá là bất ngờ với nguyên lý về công tắc này. Đây, mình lắp pin lại rồi nè. Công tắc này chỉ là ví dụ như này, mình đặt sang chế độ off ấy, bây giờ mình đã sang chế độ on đấy. Thì như này nó hạ xuống là nó sẽ chạm cái lò xo này xuống và nó sáng anh em ạ. Cũng khá là hay anh em ạ. Khá bất ngờ với công tắc này anh em ơi. Thế bây giờ mình sẽ để chế độ off anh em nhé, tắt nó lên. Bây giờ mình lắp lại cho anh em xem. Đầu tiên là anh em phải lắp đúng chiều nhé. Cái con bi lăn này nó sẽ khớp vào cái này và hai cái nút bấm nó sẽ vào hai cái nút bấm trên tay. Đầu tiên anh em phải cắm cái đầu này xuống trước này để cho nó vào cái lẫy này. Đấy. Rồi anh em cắm ổn thấy ok. Xong anh em bóp chặt cái đầu này, anh em thử bật nguồn này, ok không? Lên nguồn nhá. Lên nguồn sáng. Ok, bây giờ mình sẽ lắp ốc vào. Sau khi lắp ốc tí nữa mình sẽ thử lắp vào máy tính cho anh em xem. Không biết là cái con ốc mình vứt đâu mất rồi. Đây. Con ốc nó vẫn dính ở đây anh em ơi. Anh em thấy không? Ở trong cái lỗ này nhé, trắng trắng này. Cam mình nó hơi mờ anh em thông cảm. Rồi mình sẽ lắp nó vào. Đấy, lắp vào. Ok rồi nhé. Rồi mình sẽ lắp cái nắp pin vào. Lắp cái nắp pin này anh em. Đó. Đây này nhé. Mình sẽ cắm cái đầu này vào cái máy tính nhá, thử cái nó ở nhé. Em chờ một chút. Bây giờ mình sẽ tạm dừng mình quay. Đây anh em ơi, đây là mình sẽ cắm cái đầu này vào cái máy tính anh em nhé. Đây là cái đầu này nó hơi, mình phải rút nó ra này, mình cắm dưới đây. Biết là có nhận không nhỉ? Bây giờ mình sẽ máy tính thì nhận là có driver rồi nha. Bây giờ mình sẽ bật con chuột lên nhá. Ủa, không sáng luôn anh em. Vấn đề gì mà nó lại không sáng rồi? Chắc là mình lắp nhầm cái lò xo ta. Thế là bây giờ mình sẽ phải tháo ra mình xem lại rồi anh em ơi. Công tắc của nó không ổn định thôi. Sáng rồi anh em ạ. Đây mình sẽ lắp vào. Mình thử bấm nhé. Nhận rồi. Đây anh em thấy không? Nhận rồi. Anh em thấy không? Chuột đây. Bây giờ mình sẽ mở thử một cái web lên không, mình cuộn nó anh em nhé. Anh em chờ chút. Đây. Ok, ngon đấy anh em ạ. Mình loát lại kênh này. Quá ok anh em nhỉ. Nói chung là dùng mọi chức năng ok anh em ơi. Đây mình bấm này. Mình sẽ bấm trực tiếp ở góc này cho anh em xem này. Đấy. Nói chung là cảm giác bấm này nó không được nhạy, không được ok lắm, nhưng mà thôi tạm anh em nhé. Nói chung là cũng khá là ok. Thì anh em nào thích con chuột này thì có thể inbox cho mình sẽ phát lại cho anh em nhé. Rất chi là hay.